technicians repairing the machines. Those will be accountants taking care of the cost. Those will be working in the banking system. So every division of labor that we now see in society will be there to provide the employment that people need. But that is the cooperative sector. We are saying that we elect people so that they can render service for us, so that they can accumulate wealth on our behalf. When they tax us, for example, this year, 2019, the budget is $28.7 billion in 1 year. Over 11 billion to taxation and non-taxation. But the non-tax revenue is just 1 billion. The rest is taxation. But the other 13.5 billion is from donor support. So we are talking about a totally dependent budget and economy. Now look at the state. In 1 year, what the state accumulates is more than the 22 billion that the private sector have as external assets, and almost 3 times what the private sector has as internal assets of 9 billion. So how can you say that state should not engage in production? And that is one policy that is being sold to African countries, that the state should sell everything. It should divest itself from all systems of production and simply regulate the economy. We are saying that is a wrong notion, because the amount of wealth in state coffers should be put in the productive base in order to be able to render services, to provide better hospitals, better schools, because you cannot have better hospitals and schools merely from taxation. Because the tax base is getting narrower because of the earning capacity of people. It's not really even sufficient to maintain their survival. How can you tax them then to be able to keep hospitals and schools to be fit for purpose? So we therefore say that no, the public sector must also be productive. And how do you make it productive? It must invest in the productive base. We must search for our minerals. And those who come to prospect, we must ensure that we have majority shares in any arrangement that we have with those prospects. Where there is oil that we may discover, but what exists now, of course, all of you know that in Sanyam, Batkonko, Kato, they've been mining sand minerals utilized for our mobile systems, but nobody knew all these years where that money was going. And that money still is not being put in the productive base of the public sector. We call that sovereign national wealth, must be accumulated. And we put it in the banking system so that that wealth will be utilized for infrastructure, for the building of schools, for the building of hospitals, putting medicine in those hospitals on a continuous basis. We're saying not only that, we can have what you call the effect, a multiplying effect, by ensuring that sovereign national wealth will lead us to buy fishing trawlers and put it in the ocean, to fish, land it in the Gambia. Where you land it, of course, Gambians will be working there. Industries will emerge linked to that. Industries in the mining sector. We are saying the construction sector can also grow in that way, where sovereign national wealth will lead to public housing. The establishment of social security was meant to promote low-cost housing. So it means that the area will be well planned, housing will be established, and people who occupy them will pay gradually until you own your apartments. So we are convinced that through sovereign national wealth, we will be able to add value to the productive base of the economy, and therefore generate employment for our people and a better means of life. But we also say that we do not just develop society as we want. We inherit systems of production. For example, there is a private sector in the Gambia. We do not just go and say we'll abolish it, but we'll direct it so that it serves the purpose of eradicating poverty. It means those who invest in that sector will also have the private sector banks assisting them, but we will show them areas of investment that are priorities, and they will invest in those sectors to complement the public and the cooperative economy. That is what Pdois is calling for. We are convinced that if we do that, and if, as an African country, we have seen that Africa is very wealthy. We have looked at the world economy, and we have seen how the world economy grew. And it is important for all of you to also understand that. That's why we say that we should not only understand our country, but we should also understand the world. The world economy grew through competition ultimately when Europe, France, UK, and also the Americas developed in a capitalist way. In their countries, the land became the property of few capitalist producers, and they produced immensely to be able to provide what their societies need. They also own the industries and produce immensely what their societies need. But they also produce what they must export in order to generate more employment for their citizens. But because Britain was doing so, France was doing so, America was doing so, Germany was doing so, they engaged in competition, and the world market became narrower and narrower, especially when certain countries colonized other parts of the world and therefore used those colonies as sources of raw materials and markets. Then other countries were left out. They did not have markets again. And if you don't have market, your industries will collapse and your economy will go down. So they start to protect their own industries. That therefore will not allow you to export into our country by increasing the tariffs. So they started a war, trade war. And this trade wars is what led to world wars, First World War, Second World War, in order to take each other's colonies to expand their markets. So they began to discover in economics that that type of economy was leading to mutual killing of each other. And it is important for us to see how they try to shape the world economy and how the world economy went to our disadvantage and how we must reverse the process by promoting African unity. The first attempt to shape the world economy is to ensure that they promote trade among themselves. In the past, gold was the basis of their trade. So if you sell to Britain, Britain must pay you in gold. And therefore, the gold that is in the British coffers will now come to Germany because Germany has sold goods to Britain. And the same thing will go. So if they are selling to each other on the basis of equality, it means that the gold that goes in one side to the other will not undermine anyone's economy. But if one sells more to the other, then there will be surplus. And the other will experience deficit. So the gold will start to go more and more on that side, creating economic imbalance. So it led to a situation where certain countries did not have sufficient gold to be able to import from other countries. So they established a payment system. You will see how the IMF and all came into it. They established a payment system where the payment system will be able to have deposits of gold from each of these countries. So that if you have a deficit, you will go and borrow. And they will give you gold so that you will be able to purchase what you need to maintain the balance. And by 1913, that was the standard. But you will see the inequality of trade increased to such a level that countries like Britain could no longer maintain, in fact, that system. So they had to abolish it. And that moved Europe more and more closer to war because of protectionism. That's why I'm sure all of you would be aware what you call depressions. In 1920s up to the 30s, you see that depression, ultimately leading to the Second World War. That struggle among those countries